Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So today I'm going to do basically like a chatty life update type of video. It's one of those videos where I feel like I should have like a cup of coffee or like tea or something in my hand. So if you feel like going to get some, feel free to do so. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm just going to talk. It may be slightly more rambly than anything else, but yeah, I have been briefly mentioning the fact that things have been changing, like personally, not for the channel. I mean, I did take November off. I guess that was sort of a change. I'm already like off on a tangent. I thought I would just do like a little bit of a life update video talking about job changes and life things and burnout and a bunch of different things, and hopefully this video makes sense by the end of it. So yes, as I've mentioned multiple times now, I got a new job. It's been like a really interesting, that's probably the most neutral term I could use, a couple of months for me. You may have noticed it. I don't know like how much of my like personal stuff comes through in my videos. Like I can see it when I'm editing it, but that's also because like I have the knowledge of what's happening in my life. And so I can see sometimes like how exhausted I was in videos or how unhappy I was, not doing the videos themselves, but just like the byproduct of things that were happening in my life were wearing me out. The videos themselves, like doing this whole channel is like great for me and has been great for me. It's like brings me so much happiness and joy to do these things, which is why I continue to do them, even though I was like exhausted and burning out and all of these different things. So yeah, I'm not like really sure how much of that comes across. And like I'm not the type of person to like complain on social media or anything like that. Sometimes I would mention that I was having like really tough, exhausting days, but also like who hasn't this year, you know? So it's been just like a really, I guess, interesting slash growing experience for me. Like I'm such an optimist and I'm like, every experience, even terrible ones, are ones you can learn from. And there's purpose behind all of it and et cetera, et cetera. So I apologize for being that sort of annoying person, but that really is how I feel. So yeah, in a nutshell, besides the fact of like everything in the world being a trash fire, work got really difficult really fast. And I'm not going to like go into the details of it because, again, I don't like sort of airing out my problems with any specific person or company or anything like that in public. So I'm not going to go into like the nitty gritty details. But basically, it got to be a lot. I couldn't really handle it very well. Like, I am pretty good at compartmentalizing, is probably the best term for it. Like, when I'm at work, I like do my work stuff and I'm focused on my work stuff. And then, like, I don't really like carry that out into the rest of my day or my life. So, like, if I'm having a bad day at work, I like leave work and I like decompress because my job was in the city and I live in the suburbs. I would commute, and so like on the train I would like read or talk to friends or do things that would like help clear out whatever I might have been feeling from the day. And then like by the time I got home I was basically fine and I could like sort of rest or do whatever, work on these videos, whatever it was, watch TV, and then like go to bed, wake up the next day, and be ready to go. But it was like getting to a point where, like, after work, I wasn't able to decompress very well. I was like carrying that stress with me past work hours. It was impacting how much I was eating. It was impacting my sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night after having like anxiety based nightmares and like have difficulties falling back asleep. For like the first time in my life, I dreaded going to work, which I realize how privileged that is. Like I'm not the type of person who like jumps out of bed excited for work, but I never really dreaded it. I just sort of like knew that it was a part of life and I kind of like took it on just like any other task. Like the idea of like dreading going to work when I woke up every day was not a great thing. I was crying a lot. Like I even cried in the bathroom at work and like purposefully made myself like leave the office during my lunch breaks and things like that because I was not dealing with it very well. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it. It happened really quickly for me too. And even like all of my friends who like knew this was happening as it was going on recognizes how fast everything sort of happened. Like at the beginning of the year, I was totally fine. Like I had my annual review in April. Yeah, April. And everything was great. And then by September, I was like, I can't. So that's sort of a good sense of like how quickly things ramped up and changed for me at my job. September was sort of like the peak for me in terms of like stress and sadness and just overall not greatness. There is this YouTuber who I follow called She's So Mickey. Her name's Amanda. She's someone who I've been following for like years. She doesn't really upload very much to her channel anymore, but like she used to do Vita every year. That was like one consistent thing she would always do. And then she would often like not post again until the next April. But since she didn't do Vita this year, she decided to do Vito and do a video every day in October. And one of the reasons why she was able to do that is because she like quit her old job and decided to basically freelance full time or like start her own consulting business. And one of the first videos that she put up in October was all about burnout. And I will link to that video. John Green over on the Vlog Brothers channel also put up a video talking about burnout. It was mostly Amanda's video because I saw that one first. I remember watching that video and listening to her talk about her symptoms of burnout. And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm burnt out. And then I also remember immediately having the thought of, too bad I can't do anything about that. To me, I was like, I can't quit my job and just go 100% freelance because I haven't set up the client base to do that. Like, I obviously like freelance for Book Riot and things like that, but I wasn't making enough there to make up my income or anything like that. And I also kind of relied on Book Riot supplemental income to add to my not great income at my previous job. Like it was fine, but it wasn't anything great. And so like Book Riot was this really nice cushion. So yes, I had that thought of like, I'm burnt out, but there's nothing I can do about it. But then I remember like continuing to think about that idea of like being burnt out and not being able to do anything about it. I was like, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. So I actually went and I looked at my budget and I was like, hey, this is how much I have for bills. I have my emergency fund fully funded. Like I have more than 6 months worth of expenses in my savings account because one, that was my goal this year is to like really fill out my savings account and my emergency fund. And part of the reason why I was able to do that is because like my expenses are super low. Like I live with my mom and while I do pay her rent, it's not like what I would pay in rent if I was actually out living in the world. And like I pay for like various bills and things like that, but like really my expenses are like super super low. And like if push came to shove, like I wouldn't need to spend any money on food because like my mom would pay for that. Like she wouldn't like leave me on the streets or anything like that. Like I recognize that privilege, but even like calculating a reduced food spending income, not going to zero, but recognizing that I would still pay for some things, I realized that I actually didn't need to stay at my job. And that was sort of like the moment where it clicked. And I was like, oh, I actually don't have to deal with this anymore. So about mid-October, I decided that I was going to quit my job. I didn't know exactly the path I was going to take, but I decided to start looking at job postings that were out there. I honestly did not expect to get a new job so soon. So I can tell you like distinctly, I made my profile searchable and started applying for jobs on a Thursday. The next day I got emailed through Indeed by a recruiter at the company that I currently work at. I responded to them early the following week because I wanted to like do a little bit of research about the company to see if I actually cared about responding to them or being interested in this job, because like if you make your profile public on websites like LinkedIn and Indeed and things like that, you'll get contacted by a bunch of different recruiters from a bunch of different companies and you may not be interested in actually working for any of these people. So like I like to do a little bit of research before responding to them. So I was like, oh, this could potentially be interesting. So yeah, I responded to them early that week. I think I had a phone call with them on like a Thursday. Friday, they responded back to me after that phone call and was like, hey, we want you to come in for an in-person interview. Came in for an in-person interview that following week, I think on a Thursday. And then I ended up getting an offer for the company the following Monday and then putting in my notice basically at immediately. So yeah, within like a 3-week period, I had a new job. And then I like put in my notice. I said I was going to stay through Thanksgiving because one of my coworkers was getting married. And so I was like, I'll wait for him to like get back and like get things settled and sort of like make sure everything is really wrapped up on my end. I was done the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and then I took the week of Thanksgiving off. And now I'm about a week into the new job. So that's basically my life update. But I was gonna say that like prior to starting like that whole process and doing that, even if I didn't get a new job offer, I was planning on leaving in November no matter what. That was going to be a more difficult conversation though to have with my bosses. Like it's never really super great to be like, hey, I want to quit because I'm super burnt out and I hate working here right now. And like, obviously, you shouldn't phrase it like that no matter what. But I know that, or I would have had a strong feeling that my bosses would have tried to convince me to stay because they would have been like, oh, we'll fix things or we'll offer you more money or something along those lines. But like, I really came to a point where I realized like I did not. It didn't matter how much anyone paid me. I didn't want to be doing that job anymore. And again, I'm not trying to like smack talk my previous employer or anything like that. Like, that's not what it was about, but it was just sort of like getting burnt out. And like, I'm the type of person where I'm not like super, or I try not to be like super high maintenance in my jobs. Like, I try not to be super demanding about what an employer provides me. I'm the type of person where like if you tell me to do a job, I will do it and I will do it well. Whether I'm not going to think of put like my ego in the way and be like I'm above this, I shouldn't be doing this. Like there are lots of times in my job positions or no matter what I'm doing, like even when I'm like volunteering and things like that, I purposefully make it a point to like do whatever's required of me or do whatever's needed of me, whether or not that falls under my job description or not. I like recognize that like I was not doing my job well anymore because I was so burnt out and like I had stopped caring about the job, and that wasn't going to be good for anyone. So yeah, I was planning on leaving in November, and one of the reasons why I knew I could do that is because I have a budget and I stick to that budget and I know exactly what my expenses are, and I knew that if I was going to continue working for Book Riot, and I know like my how much I get from Book Riot varies, but I knew that with that income I could cover like basically all of the bills that I have to pay. And then I could basically just like dip into my savings for a little bit to pay for those extra things that I need, like food. That was basically all it was. Like I could just dip into my savings to pay for food. That's basically where I'm at now. And like I feel like telling that story to people to one, recognize when you are getting burnt out. And it's very possible that like you're burnt out and all you need is like a vacation or a proper break. And knowing how to recharge your own batteries and things like that. But I had reached the point of burnout where, like, even if when I took vacations and even when I took breaks, it never got better. Two, don't be beholden to anyone or anything. If you've been watching my channel for a couple of years and you've been following me online for a couple of years, you know that like my goal was to be debt free before I was 30. My reasons for being debt free were initially so that if something were to happen to me, I didn't want anyone else to be burdened by my debt. And also, for some reason, like turning 30, like makes you feel more like an adult. You can like go back. I've made videos about this, but basically I wanted to become debt free because I was like, that feels like a thing that you should be by the time you're 30. No judgment to anyone who's not. I know plenty of people who aren't. Everyone's in very different circumstances. That's not like a judgment call, but that was like sort of one of those things where it's like I knew that I could do it and I just needed to like discipline myself and like make the plan and follow through on the plan. Like my being in debt was literally just because I was being irresponsible. And so I just wanted to be financially responsible by the time I was 30, which I did. Sort of the consequence of like doing that and creating a budget and following the budget for a number of years now is that I was able to, one, build up my savings so that way I knew that I had this backup plan. One of the things that came out of like the hashtag Me Too movement that happened is there was these stories that came out about, I think it was Elizabeth Warren and other women who basically had like an F off fund, which I will have links to those articles down below if you haven't read them already. But it was basically about how Elizabeth Warren was told that like she should have some money in savings just in case her marriage went bad or her job situation, she was in a terrible job situation, like in terms of like a terrible boss who was harassing her. She should always have money in savings so that way she wasn't beholden to this man who was abusing her to provide for her and therefore like be stuck in these situations. And I realized like that's basically what I had for myself. Like I have the safety net that if something were to go wrong, and in my head the thing going wrong was always like I would lose my job and get laid off or something along those lines because I graduated in 2009 in the middle of the recession and it was so hard to find a job. And so now for me, like I'm always like slightly terrified that that's going to happen again and I'm going to get laid off and not have a job again. But that's again a different tangent for another day. So yes, I always built up my savings thinking of that and not thinking of it in the other way of like, oh, I have the savings and I know exactly how much my expenses are and I can basically cover it with the second income, which also, by the way, another thing financial people always tell you is to have some sort of side hustle. And let me tell you, it really does make a difference. So, yes, having all of those pieces in place made it possible for me to recognize my burnout and realize that I wasn't stuck in that situation and I could leave. But by the grace of God, he didn't let me just leave without a plan or without a job as a backup, and I was able to get this new job. And honestly, this job is so much better than my previous job in so many different ways. Like, I loved my previous job for very specific reasons, but like, the pay is significantly better, the benefits are significantly better. Like, I can tell I'm becoming an old person because I'm like, oh man, healthcare coverage is amazing. And like, my retirement benefits are great, things like that. This is how you know you're in your 30s. It's only been a week, and it's been just like a lot for a week. Like, I'm having to learn a lot, but I'm okay with that. That's actually a thing I like. But everyone who works there is really great, and it seems like it's a really strong and stable company as well. I know I haven't talked about what my current job is. It's complicated. The basic idea is that I am one of the people who helps handle the website for a manufacturing supply distributor. Let's just leave it at that. It's nothing like super fancy and worth talking about, and it's actually a privately held company, and they're very much like, we don't want you to be like talking on social media about the company and things like that, which mostly has to do more with like, because they're privately held, they don't want you talking about like proprietary things or like very specific things about like how much they earn or how things like that. So that has more to do with it than anything else. So I just realized how long I've been talking. I apologize. I just warned you how bad this was going to be. So, yes, that's my life update. I have a new job. I'm very happy. If you are someone who doesn't have a budget, I cannot tell you how important it is to budget. Even if you don't think you need to, it makes a huge difference. I use the app You Need a Budget, which I highly recommend. I've made a video previously with a budgeting spreadsheet in case you are like an absolute beginner, but I actually think You Need a Budget is a game changer and a life changer, and I recommend it like 1000%. It does require some tutorials and learning. Like, there is a learning curve to using You Need a Budget. It's not 1000% the way that you think it should be set up, but once you learn their method, you realize that it's a better method for handling your money, in my opinion. And yeah, you'll never look at handling your finances the same way again, in my opinion. I highly recommend it. No sort of sponsorship or anything like that. Although I guess I could put a referral link down in the description. Use it, don't use it, I don't care. But I love it. And if you do sign up for it, watch tutorials. There are a lot of great YouTube tutorials on You Need a Budget. Do that because it does, again, have a learning curve. And so don't be frustrated by that. And it also takes like 3 months for anyone who just started budgeting to like stick with their budget and to get a budget that actually properly works for them. One of the things about budgeting is that it's all very personal. So you can't really like judge your budget against other people's budgets because like everyone has very different expenses, everyone has very different priorities. The way that you budget is not going to be the same way that I budget because we care about different things, we want to do different things, we have different incomes, we have different expenses. So yes, budgeting is very personal and very individual, but use those tutorials as a guide of like setting things up and how to properly use it, and give yourself about 3 months to get comfortable using a budget. And then when you are in like situations like mine where you want to quit your job, you'll know exactly if you can or not. Even other things like life happens or emergencies happen. And so having savings, having a budget makes a huge difference in like peace of mind and well-being in order to handle those things well and not go into more debt or debt in general, and like not freaking out about the situations. Like, by having this sort of plan in place, you can sort of weather those storms, so to speak. Yeah, I didn't mean for this to turn into a budgeting video. Well, I kind of did. I think that's everything. So yes, I started a new job. It's been interesting sort of figuring out my new like routines and things like that. And doing it while doing Vlogmas is also a very interesting experience. But I'm doing just fine. Like, one of the great things about my job is that they are very strict on the hours that you work. So they never want you working outside of your set time, which is amazing. And I'm home every day by like 5 o'clock. And so like I have every night from 5 p.m. till I go to bed to do like whatever I want, include make these videos. So yeah, I think that's everything. I've talked for a very long time. If you have any questions about anything that I said, feel free to leave it down below. Don't know if this made any sense. Thank you to anyone who watched this whole video because yeah, this is a long one. Really didn't think it was going to be this long, but I've rambled for a while. So yes, that's all. Leave any comments or questions that you have down below. Otherwise, I will see you guys in some capacity tomorrow for more Vlogmas.